So this is about Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, I live in Illinois. I don't think I've ever been to like a town hall where a presidential candidate was doing like a meet and greet or a rally, because why would a presidential candidate waste their time in Illinois? It's a blue state. We know what's going to happen in November in a presidential race, no matter who's on the ballot. You know what I mean? So presidential candidates really don't come to Illinois. They barely put commercials on relative to other uh, uh, offices that people may be running for. Obviously, in Iowa, it's a very different story. They have the Iowa caucuses happening in like 2 weeks. Every presidential candidate, at least this year on the Republican side, except for Donald Trump, who just shows up when he feels like it, the other candidates are all going all across the state. They will make a whole deal about, like, I visited all 99 counties in Iowa. Vivek Ramaswamy is like, I've done it twice. But they all go to all these towns in Iowa and they meet with the voters because they want to win the delegates and they want to get these people to vote for them in the upcoming caucuses. So if you live in Iowa, you actually get a chance to meet these presidential candidates in person every 4 years, which that's kind of cool as a political nerd, right? That's a neat idea, even if it's not for your preferred party. You could still talk to them and question them, have a conversation with them. I don't know. I've never had that opportunity, but that seems really interesting. There are a bunch of questions I would love to ask some of these candidates. You know what I mean? And that's true of Democrats and Republicans. So there is a guy in Iowa. His name is Justin Scott. I talked about him on the live stream a week or two ago because there was a nativity scene outside a fire department in one city. And he's the one who basically ratted them out and said, you can't have just a nativity outside, city property. And he fixed it. Like, they eventually put up a Santa and a reindeer to try to mix it up or something. Anyway, that's Justin Scott. He's a longtime Iowa resident, an atheist, an activist, a good guy. I like him. And for several presidential cycles now, he has actually made it a habit to go to a lot of these events and ask pressing questions about what these candidates are going to do about church-state separation. He's asked Democrats, like, what are you going to do to appeal specifically to atheist voters whose votes they need if they want to win? Because you know as well as I do, Republicans obviously don't, but Democrats don't either. None of them will pander to atheists. They don't brag about their commitment to church-state separation. They will wear their religious faith on their sleeve no matter which party they're in. So good on Justin for doing that. So, of course, this time around, it's the Republicans who are traipsing through Iowa. And so yesterday, Vivek Ramaswamy happened to be in the city of Waverly. Justin is not far from Waverly. So he decided to jump in to the discussion, to the town hall, and ask a question. Now, I ask all of you, think about this. If you had a chance to ask Vivek Ramaswamy a question, what would you ask him? Because if you're like me and you've sat through those awful kiddie table debates that they've had with everyone except Trump, like, Vivek Ramaswamy has a habit of just talking and talking. He's very much like confident about everything, but right about nothing. He just loves the sound of his own voice. He's smug, he's arrogant, condescending. Like, he just oozes creeper vibes everywhere he goes. But also, he's good at talking. Like, he's smooth. They can ask a question and he'll just avoid it and then talk for a minute or two about something totally unrelated and make it sound like he answered the question, even though he totally didn't. And I'm embarrassed and annoyed by that as a fellow brown person. You know what I mean? So anyway, what would you ask Vivek Ramaswamy if you had a chance? So what Justin wanted to ask him about is something Vivek Ramaswamy has talked about on the campaign trail many times, which is he has a list of 10 truths. And I will share with you, this is the version he posted on LinkedIn, which is where all the cool kids go. But here are the 10 truths. God is real. There are two genders. I'm just scrolling down here like, what else do we have here? Reverse racism is racism. Parents determine the education of their children. Whatever. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. All right, whatever. Justin went to number 1. He said, if you're hyping up this idea that God is real, like, don't you even want to try to appeal to the ever-growing population of non-religious voters out there? And I think that's a fair question, right? Because even if you're a Republican, Republicans were already starting at like 2% atheists, but that number is rising. So even if you're a Republican, what are you going to do, Vivek, to try to reach out to people who don't share the dominant religious views? I think that's a fair question. So I'm going to share with you part one of their exchange. Um, Let me share this with you. It's only about a minute long, and then we'll talk about it after that.
The question I have that's bigger is what actual line could you tell an atheist, secular, a satanic voter that would appeal to them that's not a kitschy conservative catchphrase?
Okay, I'll tell you this.
The wokeism and all that. No, what we see is a government that is propping up Christianity, that is excusing Christianity's bad actors, that isn't doing anything to fight Christian nationalism.
So here's what I believe. There may be points in our history where that would be applicable. Respectfully, I don't think that's actually a major threat in this country compared to the threats that I named. But
Christian nationalism. But you don't feel that's
I don't feel like that's a major threat right
January
now.
6th.
I feel like wokeism and transgenderism is. But you asked me to say something that will allow to speak to people who are atheists.
Because there's an atheist watching this right now.
Yeah, let me actually just address your question. You are free to live your life and practice your faith or absence thereof freely without anybody standing in your way. Because that's what the First Amendment of the Constitution ensures.
That's part one. I will show you part two in a second. But the question again was, what line could you tell us as an atheist, a secular, satanic voter, what have you, that would appeal to them? And what did Vivek Ramaswamy say, like, in response to that? Good luck trying to figure out what his answer was in that whole word salad thing. Things he mentioned, he said, Vivek Ramaswamy said Christian nationalism, he doesn't feel like that's a threat at all. He said, quote, I don't feel like that's a major threat right now. I feel like wokeism and transgenderism is. Which, how, in what way? That's the sign of someone who is online too much and only in certain, filters, only in certain right-wing bubbles, because, oh my God, what the hell are you talking about? And then when he said, what would you say to someone who's an atheist? He said, you're free to live your life and practice, yada, 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 because that's what the First Amendment ensures. And then he just went off on that. Like, thanks for telling us we're allowed to exist in society. I'm not sure why that would make me want to vote for him, because everyone could say that and mean it. Like Donald Trump would say, yeah, you can believe whatever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. The point is, Vivek Ramaswamy has been promoting Christian nationalism. He has a lot of supporters who are Christian nationalists. And despite being a Hindu himself, he's actively promoted Christian right talking points. So, like, I don't think he answered the question at all. But then he kept talking. I'm going to play for you the rest of the conversation with Justin right here.
And if I have one job as your next president, it is to swear an oath to that Constitution and to keep it. And here's how you'll know that I know what I'm talking about. This was modeled on Thomas Paine's work, Common Sense. People are familiar with that. That was actually the leaflets they handed out to start the American Revolution. I'll tell you about one thing about Thomas Paine. He was an atheist, actually. So one of the men who started the American Revolution, most of our founding fathers were Christian. Thomas Jefferson was a deist. He's my favorite founding father, probably my favorite president. I look up and find the most common cause with him. Less so with Thomas Paine, but I respect the hell out of him, because he too, without him, the American Revolution wouldn't have happened. So I recognize that about our history, and I recognize that about our Constitution. And I recognize that even people of diverse faiths in this country were bound together by the ideals enshrined in that Constitution. And I will fight to the death for actually reviving those constitutional ideals in this country. And what's in that First Amendment is, you may not agree with what I have to say, but I will defend to the very end your right to say it. That's America. That is what makes America great. That is what makes America itself. And so, yes, can we disagree on some questions and still have you support me as your U.S. president? Not as your pastor, but as your president. I think darn right you can. That's my answer.
This might help you. Yes or no, just to finish it
okay.
up. Do you believe our rights come from God or from man?
I believe that our natural rights,
secular democracy,
our natural rights outside of a government come from God, are natural rights. In the context of a constitutional republic, the rights that we enjoy are the ones enshrined and codified in our Constitution. And I recognize the difference between being a president and a pastor.
Thank you.
Okay. So he said some stuff in there that was like, fine. And again, nothing he said would ever make me want to vote for him. He's like a smooth talker with horrible ideas. A lot of style, no substance. But also Justin's question was ultimately ignored, wasn't it? Like he wanted to know, what would you say to atheists to get them to vote for you? And he just said a bunch of generic BS about like, well, religious freedom. Some of our founding fathers were not Christian, which is true, but also the ones who were Christian did not want, religion and government mixed up together. So I don't know what the point of saying that is. One thing I took away from that conversation is that guy, the guy you just saw in the video. Okay, I don't mind that guy as much. I hate his ideas. I'm saying like that guy looks like he can have a conversation. The Vivek who shows up on debate stages is an insufferable jerk, for lack of better words. And it is so weird that when he's performing on stage, he is such a smug asshole. But one-on-one, he actually seems like just some guy you would have a debate with about whatever, and he's just on the losing end of all of it. But besides that, like, he acknowledged religious pluralism and shared values, but keep in mind, his idea of what our shared values are whatever conservative Christians think they are. Religious pluralism is acceptable to the government in his mind as long as they are promoting those Christian values. So, interesting. The reason I just wanted to put that out there, there is another part to the story, but the reason I wanted to put that out there is that's a good question that Justin was asking. And I'm kind of jealous of the fact that voters in Iowa or maybe New Hampshire or wherever one of those early states are where they're voting in the primaries, I love the fact that they have access to these people where you can ask them, you can press them on these issues. I wish more voters would press these candidates on these issues because I don't say this like the media is awful, but a lot of mainstream journalists who get access to these people, they never ask questions like this. And so kudos to Justin for trying to get an answer out of Vivek, even though the answer he got was typical Vivek BS. Now, here's the other part of that story. Later that same day, this is all on Thursday. Later that day, Vivek Ramaswamy went to the town of Waterloo, Iowa. And Justin had actually planned to go to that event, not really the first one. He was going to go to that Waterloo event with his own kids because he wanted them to have the experience of seeing a presidential candidate with their very eyes right in front of them. He wasn't planning on asking any questions. But toward the end of that event, someone else in the audience asked Ramaswamy a different question, which is this: will you fight to put the Bible first in the public school system? Will you fight to put the Bible first in the public school system? That question led to like a 6-minute response from Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm not going to play the whole thing for you, but I will show you like an edited clip of it, but I'll point out a couple things in advance. One is that I want you to listen for when he references Justin Scott in his response, because he does, with the understanding that Justin is literally in the room watching this all take place. And afterwards, Justin actually tries to get clarification on this question. So let me play this second clip. This is an edited version of what happened at Vivek Ramaswamy's second stop there.
Will you fight to put the Bible first in the public school system?
So I believe that we should revive faith in our public school system. Absolutely. I'll say something. I'm going to use this opportunity to tell you about our faith. And so I want to say what I think is the role of government officials, including the U.S. president. I don't think it's the job of the U.S. president, nor do I think I would be the best one who's qualified to be a pastor to spread Christianity throughout the country, being of a slightly different than traditional faith background. And Thomas Jefferson was in this category. He was a deist, actually, not a traditional Christian. And I think it helped him in the same way it'll help me reach a religiously pluralistic country. We actually have people of many different religions in this country. was a guy who seemed to be a good conservative, but he came to an event earlier and he challenged me on this. He was an atheist and he was upset that I said God is real. But we worked it out to say that we will still stand for the same set of values that we want Americans to share in this country. And so my job is to swear an oath to that Constitution and keep it, which includes religious liberty. So that's the honest answer to your question, and I hope that addresses it. Thank you, young man. I appreciate it. I like your tie. That's good. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not atheist.
Oh, right.
I'm interested in his answer, and I don't feel like you gave it. Would you push to have Bibles in public school?
No, is the answer. I'm not going to push because it's not the job of the U.S. president to push it.
Okay, so a few things there. One is, remember that initial question was, will you fight to put the Bible in the public school system? He never answered that question directly, which is why Justin pressed him on it later. The other thing is that when Vivek Ramaswamy referenced Justin, he said there was this guy who came, he seemed to be a good conservative. I promise you, Justin is not a conservative, but he came to an event earlier and challenged me on this. He was an atheist and he was upset that I said God is real. That wasn't the issue. Vivek did not listen. The issue was not that he said God is real. It's that he wasn't appealing to non-Christians. And then he said, but we worked it out. You heard the conversation now. Did it sound like they worked it out? I asked Justin about that too. His response to me was, we did? That's news to me. But at the end of that thing, Justin yelled out from the back of the room, like, I'm interested in that guy's answer, and I don't feel like you gave it. Would you push to have Bibles in the public schools? And guess what? He got a straight answer from Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy said, no is the answer. I'm not going to push it because it's not the job of the U.S. president to push it.
The question I have that's bigger
about that. Now, I would say, do you believe Vivek Ramaswamy when he says, as president, he would never do that sort of a thing? No, I don't trust the guy for a second. I think he would totally do it if he thought he could get away with it. But that's besides the point. The point is, you have to press these Republicans on questions like this because it's going to come up. And again, Ramaswamy praised that whole exchange as like a healthy dialogue. But what happens later on when he starts saying we should have the Bible in public schools? Guess what? Now there's video of him saying, no, we shouldn't do that, which I know hypocrisy doesn't count for much these days. You can't really catch these people in the act, but like, it's something. And that we only got that answer because someone like Justin was there to call them out on it. One interesting side note, I was talking to Justin about that exchange. He told me that as soon as that conversation was over, and by the way, you didn't see it in the clip I just showed you, but Vivek Ramaswamy said, you know, he enjoyed that exchange. It was a good conversation before he moved on to another question. The owner of the restaurant they were all in went up to Justin right after that and kicked him out of that room. According to Justin, the guy said, I have 5 undercover Waterloo police officers here. The tension is rising in the room, so we just need you to leave. I guess there was a reporter who asked that business owner for comment. He said no comment. Vivek Ramaswamy's team had no idea this even happened, so I'm not blaming them for this. But it is kind of funny that Justin has spent years asking Republicans and Democrats a lot of these pointed questions that challenge them on something that is a pretty big deal to a lot of voters. And this time, when he just asked for clarification on someone else's question, that's the time he got booted out of the town hall meeting. But he took it in stride. He actually shared with me one other thing here that I wanted to show you, which is he got a picture with Vivek later on. Isn't that adorable? I don't think Justin's going to vote for the guy, and I hope none of you are either. But again, I love the fact that you have voters able to challenge these people on this. I wish more, if you're an atheist and you live in Iowa and you have these candidates come into your backyard every day, please, if you have the opportunity, take it. Go to these meetings, ask a question, get it on camera and share it, because there are so many things they need to be pressed on. And CNN's not going to ask them about it. You know, they're not going to go on MSNBC. So ask them if you get a chance. That's it.